Hello everybody! Welcome back. My name is Alethea Thomas. Thanks for joining my YouTube channel. If you have been here before, you know what this is all about. If you've not joined me before, I am primarily a booktuber. I like to read books, I like to produce bookish content, and I like to talk about books, literature in general, and kind of vlog my reading journey. So if you are at all interested in that, please join me, subscribe, and just follow along. I'm having a really fun time doing all of this. I'm actually in a bit of a hurry today because I don't have that much time to film, but I really wanted to get in my favorite books that I read this last year in 2020. So I will very quickly go through my top 10, and without further ado, let's just get right into it. My first book, which is my number 10 for 2022, was The Wind in the Willows by Kenneth Grahame. This book was so fun. It was really cute. The story itself isn't terribly complicated. It's just about the lives of these animals that live in a forest and, what they do, kind of the silly adventures that they get into. Just kind of some lighthearted fun. The book itself is just really cozy. Kenneth Grahame does a great job in describing the scenery around. I think that it starts like in the spring, maybe autumn time, a warmer time, and then it kind of goes into winter time. The end of the book happens like, I think right after the winter's over, perhaps. There's just a lot of atmosphere. There's a lot of nature in this book, and it's a really cute read. Also, the badger is my spirit animal. The badger and I would just get on fabulously, so he is one of my favorite characters. You probably may have watched The Wind of the Willows when it was on the PBS channels. If you were, as old as I am, they were on there. And I think it was Claymation, if I'm remembering correctly. It was some kind of an animation style, but it was really cute. So if you're at all, remember that or interested in that at all, I would totally suggest reading Wind in the Willows, because it's so cute, it's fun, it's lighthearted, and it's kind of a breath of fresh air from other serious books. The next book is actually two books, so that's fun. My least favorite one, which is still a good favorite, is Hear the Winds Sing by Haruki Murakami. And then I would say that number 8 would be Pinball, 1973. They are the first books that Haruki Murakami wrote. It's about the lives of these two gentlemen who are growing up. They're kind of in their early 20s. They start a business. I think it's a translation business, and it's just kind of about their lives and what they do, and just kind of being lost and listless in your early 20s, which is extremely common. I identified with that a lot because you never really know what you're doing in your 20s. And then Pinball 1973 is about one of the characters kind of going on this journey to find a pinball machine that he was very familiar with. And there's not a ton of talk of pinball in here, believe it or not. It's more about the life of the character progressing onward, and what's kind of going on. It's just really the sequel to Hear the Wind Sing. I really enjoyed a couple of the additional characters that show up in this book because they are just hilarious. This book is so Japanese, just little nuances that are just so Japanese. It is just so funny, and I can't describe it accurately. You would have to kind of be around Japanese culture enough to kind of understand that, which I have had some friends, and I've kind of been around Japanese culture a little bit, so I kind of get it. And it's just hilarious. The nuances are great, and it's so in here. Slice of life, if you're familiar with that. Haruki Murakami, especially in these two books, is all about slice of life. So if you're interested at all, definitely pick up these books, and they come together in one, which is very convenient. Alright, so my number 7 is The Stationery Shop by Marjan Kamali. It is about two young people in Iran during the time of the Iranian Revolution, and they're, younger. I would say that the girl was 17 or 18 years old. The young man was a little bit older. But it's about kind of their romance and, you know, how they meet each other and their society at that time and all of the things going on in the background while they just really want to be together. And it ends up not happening. And then the story continues on years and years later, and we find out what happened to them as they got older, how their lives were different, and how they meet each other again eventually. It is a tearjerker. It is really interesting. The historical, you know, context that it's around is really, really cool. I actually learned a lot about the Iranian Revolution that I didn't know. I didn't really know very much about it at all, and got me interested in you know, looking at it and reading some more about it just to become more familiar with it. So it was a really good book. It's a bit of a tearjerker, and it just got you. It just gets you in a way, and I just really liked it for that. Let me grab my tea here. So the next book was Dracula by Bram Stoker, so this will be my number 6. It's so good. It's so iconic. Dracula is just iconic. Bram Stoker basically he didn't make the vampire, but he set the standard, I suppose, for the story, the tale of the vampire, what Dracula himself was capable of, the power, the kind of sexiness almost, the majesty, the secrecy around the vampire itself. He made it cool. And it's a good book. It's a very interesting writing style. All of the writing is done in document form, so they're either telling the story through journals, entries, or through other documents. So that's really kind of interesting. And it's if you're at all interested in vampires, then you should definitely read Dracula. So my number 5 book was A Far Wilder Magic by Alison Saft. It was a very different kind of fantasy book than what I'm used to reading. And it wasn't a high fantasy, it wasn't adventure, it wasn't sword slashing and heraldry and all of this sort of thing. It was a bit more relaxed. There was magic involved. There was an ancient creature that had to be captured because this was a hunt that was going on for probably centuries and centuries. Alchemists and hunters kind of work together to catch this creature so that they can basically take its essence and make, I think it's the Philosopher's Stone or something, that was the ultimate goal. If I'm remembering correctly. I don't know. It's been a little while since I've read it. It's been over a year. But it was a really cool journey. There was a bit of a romance element to it. The characters, you know, were their own people. They were really strong characters. And I enjoyed reading this one a lot. And I enjoyed the romance somewhat. It was just, I think what I really liked about it wasn't like other fantasy that I've read, you know, in the past. It was just very different, and it was really good. So I suggest you go read it if you're at all interested. The next book, which will be number 5, was The Witch's Heart by Genevieve Gornichek. If I'm pronouncing that wrong, I am so sorry. Gornichek. The Witch's Heart was about Norse mythology, and it was following Angrboda, who was the Norse, she wasn't a Titan, she was a frost giant, I think. She was the mother of the large wolf. I know that one of them was named Sleipnir, something like that, and then the snake, I think the world snake, or something like that, but the giant snake as well in Norse mythology. And it was just such a cool book. She was also Loki's wife. So Angrboda is kind of on the side. She wants to be away from the politics of the Norse gods. She doesn't want anything to do with them because she had an encounter with Odin at the beginning of the book, and now she didn't want anything to do with that court anymore, with those people. She wanted to stay away from them and out of the limelight. Loki comes to her, you know, kind of woos her, becomes her friend, they get together and they have these children, and so she then becomes the mother of these monsters, the wolf and the snake. She also has her daughter, who is named Hel. Hel is the Norse goddess. I think she was of death or something like that, but she was a girl who was half alive and half dead. Like parts of her body were skeletal. Their life is at the beginning, what happens to all of them, fate. You know, they are wrapped up in the fate of the Norse gods. And Angrboda wants to not be a part of that fate. She tries to fight that fate, and then the end of it. So it just got me in some ways, especially, you know, her being the mother of these children who she saw as her children. She never saw her children as monsters, where there were all these other gods and goddesses. They were like, oh, she's the mother of monsters. She's gotten, you know, she's these freaks, how, you know, in all of this. They just judged her from the beginning, and it was so heartbreaking. Parts of it were so heartbreaking, and it was just so good. So I recommend anybody interested in Norse mythology at all, go ahead and pick that one up, because it's really good. And number 3 is Wuthering Heights. This may be a surprise to a lot of you that watched my my video about Wuthering Heights. I wasn't really sure what to think of this book when I first picked it up and started reading it. I disliked every character in this book pretty much, except for maybe 1 or 2. It had to grow on me. There were problems at the outset that the characters were facing, just kind of abuse. There was a lot going on underneath the surface of this book. And I think that I am going to read it again this year in 2023, just so that I can kind of dig into it further and get a little bit, maybe more of an understanding, maybe more an appreciation for this book. But this book, man, it really sticks with you. The writing is just absolutely brilliant. Emily Brontë had to have been an absolute genius. I think all of the Brontë sisters are geniuses now. I was not interested in reading them initially, but then I, you know, read Jane Eyre, and I just was like, wow, I'm wondering if all of these women wrote like this. So I'm really looking forward to digging into more of the Brontë sisters this year for sure. So anyway, that is Wuthering Heights. I totally suggest you pick it up and read it. It's interesting. There's going to be a lot of surface level stuff you're probably not going to like, but if you get past that, it's a very deep, it's a very intense book. This book is all about intense, deep emotion, and it does it so well. That's it. My number 2 for 2022 was Little Women. Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. I had read this a long time ago when I was much younger, and I enjoyed it then, and I intensely enjoyed it now. This book will now always be a part of my life. This book will continue to influence my life and make me feel things that hardly any other book has ever made me feel before. It will be my peace, my tranquility, my go-to book every winter. It's joy. It is pure joy to read. It is pure joy to pick up. It's just joy. I love it so much. I love all the characters. I love every single one of them, and I can relate to every single character in every single way in this book. So if you like Little Women, you know where I'm at on this. So read Little Women. If you're a dude, if you're a gal, if you're anything, anyone, if you're alive, if you're breathing and alive and with us, read Little Women. That's it. And then, my number 1, the book that surprised me the most this year, and the book that was the greatest joy to read. And I will read it again very, very soon, because I absolutely love it, because it is my number 1 top favorite book now, forever. And it may get toppled off at some point. Hell, I may even end up loving Wuthering Heights even more once I dig into it more. But Jane Eyre, as of right now, my number 1 favorite book. So good, so brilliant. It is a coming-of-age story done right. you can relate to Jane in so many different ways. She is so brilliant. I am in love with Mr. Rochester. Mr. Rochester is my ideal man. You can have your Darcys. Mr. Rochester is for me, all the way, straight up. My husband reminds me a lot, actually, of Mr. Rochester, because I absolutely love the banter between he and Jane throughout this entire book. I know he's got his faults. I know he threw, he threw his crazy wife up into the attic because, heck, he was crazy and he couldn't do anything about it, and he didn't know what else to do. And yes, it was a terrible, awful, horrible, very bad thing to do, but I still like Mr. Rochester. He's such a catch. But anyway, that is my number one, Jane Eyre. Read Jane Eyre. If you haven't read Jane Eyre, what the heck are you doing? Read Jane Eyre. Like, read Wuthering Heights, read Jane Eyre. Like I said, I'm going to probably read more of the Brontë sisters. The next one by Charlotte Brontë I'm going to read will probably be Villette. And I'm really, really looking forward to that. Because I love her writing style. And I hope that Villette is just as good as Jane Eyre. So, anyway, that is my top 10 for 2020. I hope you all enjoyed this. I tried to make this super quick because, like I said, I'm running low on time here. I gotta go get my kids. So, thank you so much for joining me, and happy reading. I hope you guys are enjoying your 2023 so far. I sure am. But, happy reading. Bye.